Here we go. If you have any questions, you can address those into the chat, and Laura should be able to help you out with those. Although I've also said if she thinks we have questions that are worth or that need to be discussed for the whole group, then we'll do that too. But as I said, I'm going to show you a few things that we've got through the Academic Support Center website that I actually use in my classes when I teach APA. I think they're a good way to get started with APA. So what I have is a template, first of all, which some of you maybe have seen. And then we have a sample paper, 7th edition APA that it's fully annotated, and so we can take a look at that as well. And I think by using those two things, I'll be able to go over, again, the basics of APA documentation and formatting. And as I said, if anybody has any questions, please address those to the chat, and we will do our best to respond to them. And I think we can go ahead and get started. So let me show you here. First of all, can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Good, thank you. I suppose I should ask if anybody can't see my screen. So to get to what we're looking at here, from the AU homepage, or really you could do this from any homepage, the fastest way to get here is to go to aurora.edu/ASC. Okay, if you want to do it that way. Otherwise, you have to go to the library website and hit the academic resources link. This is easier and faster. Aurora.edu/ASC will take you right here to the Academic Support Center website. If you scroll down to the center, off to the left here under Academic Support Center, we have our citing sources link. If you click there, it'll take you to this page. It's not the first thing, but pretty much the first thing you notice is this here, APA Format 7th edition. And in here, we have a template and a sample student essay. So I'm going to start with the template because this gives a nice overview. And I'll make it a little bit bigger for you. So I should first ask, I imagine that you all have varying degrees of familiarity with APA. Does anybody just shout out? Anybody who has feels really confident, has used APA a lot, knows it really well. Okay, you've used APA some, you've had to use it for classes, but you don't feel very familiar with it, you're not real comfortable with it, and that's why you're here. Like, just shout out, like I said.
That's me.
Okay.
That's me too.
Okay, so a couple of you are in that. I've used it, kind of familiar with it, but I need to work on it. And then I've never used really APA before. I don't really know it at all. I'm very uncomfortable with it, and I need to learn it and start using it. Just give me a shout out.
Me.
Okay, that's fine. That's a lot of people. I get this in my classes all the time. Students have never really used APA before. They don't really know it very well. They just know that they're going to have to be using it, and so that's, that's why we cover it. So we break APA down into basically 3 components. For every APA paper, you have to have 3 things: a title page, the body of the paper, and a reference page. There's other components that you could have, but those are the three that you must have. Every APA paper has to have a title page, obviously the paper itself, and a reference page. Within the paper itself, then, you have in-text citations, which are basically a shorthand that are designed to refer to the reference page where you have your complete bibliographic references. I'm going to go over all three of these things because APA is about, it's not just about citation and documentation, it's also about formatting. So in addition to paying attention to the way you cite your sources in the text and the way you list them on your reference page, you also have to pay attention to the document formatting itself. And this is where I think it gets into areas of formatting that I think a lot of students aren't really used to paying that much attention to. So this is where you have to pay attention to things like capitalization. You have to pay attention to formatting of your titles. You have to pay attention to punctuation, things like that. It all seems like little stuff, but APA is really all about formatting, and formatting of text is really how you signal to your readers what particular citation elements mean. And I'll explain more about that in a minute. But the point is that formatting is something that you do have to pay close attention to when you are putting together an APA document. So to start with, on your title page, there's a few elements that you have to include. The first is a page number in your header, which you can see first page header, right? If you, in header and footer, you can insert your page number there. You see it's off to the left under page number, top of page, and then you're going to go down to the third one because it's in the upper right. That's all you need in your header. If any of you are familiar with the 6th edition of APA, then you remember having to put a running head in your header. You no longer have to do that. They changed that with APA 7th edition. There's no running head anymore. All you need now are the page numbers. So that's your first element. The second element is the title itself, and that's a few spaces down from the top, maybe 3 spaces down from the top. It's centered. It follows what we call title style capitalization. That means that every major word is capitalized. Don't capitalize little words, prepositions, articles, unless they're the first word of the title. Then you want to make sure that it's set at boldface. So the title of the paper goes in the center. It is capitalized with standard capitalization, and it is boldface. Then you need to skip a space. You'll notice there's an empty space between the title and your name. Now, I'm showing you the template. This is actually designed for you to download and use as a template. So where it says title of the paper, you should be able to go in there and just type in your own title. It's already formatted correctly. It's centered properly. It's capitalized. Although if you type in your own title, you're going to have to do your own capitalization. But it's all already formatted. So you put your title in there. You can put your name in here, course number, all the other information. Just remember, skip a space after your title, then your name. The next line is, your course number. The next line is your professor's name, and the last line is the date. And that's the date that it's submitted, the date that it's due, I should say. One more basic thing, the entire document, you want to make sure that it is double spaced and that you have 1-inch margins set on all 4 sides. Just set that as your default. And that's your title page. Pretty simple. Now you'll notice here, page 2 is an abstract. Now the first thing I have to tell you is that APA 7th edition no longer requires an abstract. So the abstract is not included in a standard APA paper unless your professor specifically requires it. And there are still plenty of professors who ask students to include an abstract, I think because they want you to have the practice of writing an abstract, but it isn't required, again, unless they ask you to. So unless you have specific instructions to include an abstract, you do not need an abstract. This is here in case you do have to write one. It shows you how to format it, and it explains how to write it. So the first thing you need to know if you're going to include an abstract is that the word abstract is how you title it. It's like the title on the title page, it's centered, and it's boldface, and it's capitalized. As far as writing the abstract itself, there's a description here. According to page 38 of the 7th edition, an abstract is a brief, comprehensive summary of the contents of the paper. An abstract is not usually required for student papers unless requested by the instructor or institution. And so then it describes how to do it. Label of the abstract, as it appears here, between 150 and 250 words, and typically written after the paper is completed. Usually the last thing that you write is the abstract, if you're going to write an abstract. If you're not, then you can skip this. And page 2 is the first page of your paper. So the top of your first page, you want the title of the paper. You don't want the word introduction. It's assumed that the first paragraph, sometimes the first 2 paragraphs of your paper, are the introduction. So you don't need to label it as the introduction. You just need to put your title here, formatted and centered exactly the way it is on the title page. And then you have your introduction, which typically includes a thesis statement or a statement of purpose, research questions. It is an introduction to what you're writing about. Now, the thing you need to know at this point is that APA papers are typically subdivided. They're usually split into sections. Each section has a heading. So you can see after the introduction here on the template, you've got a subject heading. And APA allows several different levels of headings, something like 5 different levels, I think. I think most people only ever really use one level, this major heading. And then occasionally you'll get a subheading under that. So those are kind of the only ones that I'm really concerned about here. But you can see that a major heading for a new section is formatted and centered exactly the way your title is. Center, title style capitalization, so all major words, as you can see, heading, major, section, is capitalized because it's a verb. Bold, centered, you notice that the conjunction, the article, and the preposition are all not capitalized. All right. And then for your template, this paragraph describes the most common ways of creating an in-text citation. So let's talk about some of those. Actually, you know what? Let's hold off on that. I'm gonna skip ahead and finish with the formatting stuff here, and then I'll go over the citation stuff using the sample paper. I think that'll be easier and clearer for you. So here's a subheading or a level 2, right? So you have a heading, that's level 1, a subheading under that is level 2. You'll notice that it's capitalized and formatted exactly the same way. It's bold-faced and all the major words are capitalized, but it's on the left margin. It's flush with the left margin rather than centered. I think most of you probably won't go deeper than a subheading like this. If you ever need to, there are a variety of resources that you can consult to tell you, how to do levels beyond the second level heading. But I'm not going to do that right now because, as I said, it's uncommon for students to need to go beyond the second level. Now, the other thing they show you here has to do with quoting. There are 2 ways to quote material from your sources. I should first tell you that, generally speaking, as a rule, APA prefers paraphrasing over quoting. If you're going to quote, they ask you to do it sparingly, and they prefer that you paraphrase information or you reproduce data from your sources rather than quote directly from them. Either way, you need to cite them. The difference is that when you use a quote, you have to include page or paragraph number. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. For right now, I want to talk about the quoting. There are two ways to quote. A short quote is integrated into your text, like this one, right? The quote starts here. The obesity reduction was significantly weaker for girls who lived in neighborhoods with higher densities of unhealthy food outlets. You can tell that it's a quote because it's in quotation marks. It's a short quote, and so that means it is integrated into the text of the paper, and the citation follows the quote. A short quote means that it's less than 40 words. A quote of more than 40 words is considered a long quote and needs to be formatted as what we call a block quote. And you can see that here. And I imagine some of you, maybe all of you, have had to do this before, but just in case, let me show you how to do it. So let's say you're typing along and you have this quote and you use this quote and you realize it's more than 40 words. And so you want to make it a block quote. It starts here with cavities, right? So the first thing you need to do is isolate the quote. So at the beginning of the quote, hit return so that it starts on its own line. And then at the end of the quote, do the same thing. So now the quote is isolated as its own paragraph. You can highlight it. Now, the easiest thing to do, once you've highlighted the whole thing, go up to your the ruler up at the top, make sure it's visible, obviously. At that, you see the little box here where my arrow is pointing at the bottom of the two arrows. You want to grab the box and you want to pull the whole thing in 1/2 inch. And that's it. Don't do anything on the right side. This is all on the left. So you bring it in on the left. You'll notice a couple of other things. There are no quotation marks surrounding the quote. You don't use the quotation marks because you've already set it off as a separate paragraph like this with a different margin. That's the signal that this is a quote. It's just a long quote. So no quotation marks. And your citation goes at the end of the quote after the final punctuation. And there's no punctuation after the citation. Right, so that's block quotes. Again, 40 words or more for a block quote. Anything less than that, you can integrate right into the text of your paper. All right, so I want to open the sample paper so we can talk about citations. Does anybody have questions about anything that I've shared so far that you want to ask directly or? Okay, so let's look at the sample essay. This is a short sample essay. Which, as soon as it opens, you can see is fully annotated, right? So just looking at the title page here, we can see some things. Sorry, let me make it bigger again. Okay, there we go. So notice a few things. Right at the top, your first note says space down about 4 times before typing your title. The header includes page number, right? So you got the arrow pointing up to your page number. Here's your title, Life Influences on Depictions of Friendship in Works of J.R.R. Tolkien. I did not write this essay. I just formatted it. You'll notice here a description of the title page. Title is formatted in boldface type and capitalized according to title style. All major words are capitalized. Title page information is centered on the page and located about 4 spaces down from the top margin. Here it tells you to insert a space between the title and your name. Here it tells you to type your name, the course number, and title, the professor's name with their title, and the date you will be submitting the paper, each of them on separate lines. Okay, so we just looked at that on the template, but it's all laid out and explained there. Now, going right to the text, there's a few things that it starts pointing out. First of all, titles of long works. Books, journals, magazines, newspapers, feature films, long poems, full-length plays, TV programs should be italicized and capitalized using standard title style capitalization. I don't know why the font is different there, but anyway. So you notice the titles here, The Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, The Silmarillion, they're all books, so they're all italicized. And you notice the standard capitalization, right? All the major words are capitalized. So that's just some basic formatting, and that's not really an APA specific thing. That's across different documentation systems. So, you know, like in in MLA, you'd actually do the same thing. You notice the other things here, type the title of the paper at the top of the page. So all the formatting stuff about that, first level heading, margins, 1 inch on all 4 sides. So all that stuff that we've just gone over. As we work down though, you'll notice we start seeing citations. So first example right here. According to Warfare History Network 2020. That's called a signal phrase. That, according to Warfare History Network, is a signal phrase. We call it that because it's signaling that a quote is coming. And you'll see it most commonly phrased exactly like this, according to. Most common way of creating a signal phrase. When you use a signal phrase, in other words, when your source is mentioned by name in a signal phrase, you must include the date of publication in parentheses right after the name of the source. That's a standard APA basic citation. The name of the source followed by the date of publication in parentheses. Okay. That's if you're mentioning the source in the text in a signal phrase. You'll notice here it says all text should be double spaced, but then you'll notice there are other ways to do this too. First of all, notice here, Canberry ND. If your source does not have a date, you can indicate that it doesn't have a date with ND, which means not dated. Or some say it means no date. Either way. Now, you'll notice here, when you do not mention the source by name in the sentence or in a signal phrase, you have to include the name and the date in a parenthetical citation after the information that you've taken from the source. So from here, Canberry likens, I think it's the dead marshes from the Lord of the Rings to the trenches of the Somme in France. This sentence is covered up, but it's information from a source. These soldiers had been among friends belonging to a school group called, I don't remember the name of it, but that's the name of the group that they were members of. So all this information here preceding the highlighted part, that's taken from a source. It's not a quote, and it's not introduced. The source, McIlwain, is not introduced in the sentence, right, where that information is being presented. So it all goes in parentheses right after the information. So you give all this information, these soldiers have been among friends belonging to a school group, et cetera, et cetera. Immediately following that, in parentheses, you use the last name of the author, a comma, and the date of publication. And then you close the parentheses. Now, in this case, the sentence continues with a direct quote, the part in green. If you use a direct quote and you don't mention the source by name, you do the same thing. Source goes in parentheses right after the quote. But with a quote, you have to also include either a page number or a paragraph number. So here you'll see there's the name again, McIlwain, comma, 2018, comma, Then you include the page number. If it's a page number, use just the P and the period, lowercase, and the page number. If it's a paragraph number, you'll use the abbreviation PARA, period, and then the number. Paraphrases or other kinds of information reproduced from a source, statistics or data, don't require page numbers. You only need a page number when you're using a quote. Okay, so again, you see an example here, information that's provided in the sentence without the source being mentioned in the sentence, so it goes in the parentheses at the end of the sentence. And it's all explained right here and right here. We keep going. You can see some other examples. If your source is undated, you see the ND there. This is a block quote, right? So you have another signal phrase, according to Camberry, ND. Here's your block quote. You notice at the end of it, in this case, it's a paragraph. So there's what it's PARA period 9. It's a block quote, so there's no punctuation after it. You notice the citation comes after the quotation marks. With an integrated quote, like the one down here, you use quotation marks, and the citation comes between the closing quotation mark and the last punctuation. So another example here, right? Small 2004. So there you have, it's a signal phrase, small points to the type. So you've mentioned the source by name. Immediately after that name, you put the date in parentheses. You're introducing a quote here. So with the quote, after the quote, you use the page number. And this note here is a description of how to do a block quote. This is an indirect quote. An indirect quote is where you quote, and say in this case, you're quoting C.S. Lewis. That's what's happening here. But you're not getting the quote directly from C.S. Lewis, you're getting it from a different source. So in other words, in this case, you have this article by Gilsdorf in which he quotes Lewis as saying this about Tolkien, no harm in him, only needs a smack or so. In that case, it's an indirect quote, right? You're getting it indirectly. You can cite them both, and you can see how here. The sentence, the signal phrase introduces the actual source, C.S. Lewis. Initially, Lewis is said to have thought of Tolkien, quote, no harm in him, only needs a smack or so. So you've credited Lewis with being the source of the person who said the quote, but in the parentheses, in the citation after the quote, you're going to give your actual source, where you actually got the quote from. In this case, it's Gilsdorf. So you would say, as cited in Gilsdorf, comma, 2006, comma, paragraph 6. So that's for an indirect quote, which are not uncommon. So there's every reason to think you will probably have to do that at some point. All right. There's other examples of things here. Alternate citation style for sources that don't have page numbers is to identify the specific section within the source and then give the paragraph number within that section. So you can see here, Dugan, no date. The name of the section is Professor Tolkien, the Inklings and Hobbits section. So you put that part in quotes, indicate that's the name of the section. You follow it with the paragraph number within that section. I would do that if you're dealing with a source that's really long and has a lot of paragraphs and you don't want to count, 30 some paragraphs. I wouldn't want to either. All right, so let me pause and ask if anyone has any questions before we go through references. Okay, let's talk about references. So now these are they're on the template as well. The template gives you the basic format for the major types of sources that you're likely to include. These are actual sources and it's all explained here, so I'm going to use this. Excuse me. So first of all, references is a separate page. So start a new page And as with every other main heading, it goes in the center, it's boldface and capitalized. So you just use the word references at the top of your page. Now here on your reference page, you will use the second of the two capitalization styles. This one is referred to as title style. I've only ever seen this in APA style, and they only require it on the reference page. It's strange capitalization style. I mean, we're all used to, I think, capitalizing titles with, all the major words capitalized. With sentence style capitalization, you only capitalize the first word and any names. And for the purposes of your reference page, your title and any subtitle are considered separate titles, and so you would do the same thing for a subtitle. So you can see in the first example, first couple of elements are going to be the same, no matter what kind of source you're dealing with. So for every source, you're pretty much always going to start with an author. You're going to follow that in parentheses with a date of publication, and you're going to follow that with a title. Pretty much always. After that title is where things start to vary depending on the kind of source you're dealing with. So just remember, author, date, title, they're pretty much all going to start that way. The other thing you need to know is that you're never going to refer to an author by their first name on your reference page. It'll always be a last name and a first initial. So you can see in your first example here, Dugan, comma, D, period. Now this is a source with one author, so it's easy. In this case, it doesn't have a date of publication, so you use the ND. Make sure you include your periods, and make sure you put a period after the parentheses. And then it's followed by the title. In this case, the title is J.R.R. Tolkien, A Biographical Sketch. So you'll notice that the title itself, everything is capitalized because it's his name. You'll notice the subtitle, the only word capitalized is the first word. In this case, the article. Now, the name of the source, the Tolkien Society, and then, because this is a website, so you'll just give the name of the site and then the URL. And the URL should appear in this complete form, https://www, etc. You may, again, some of you, if you're familiar with APA 6th edition, you remember including retrieved from here. You no longer have to do that, okay? Just the URL. Let's look at the next example. Same thing, Izard, comma, J, period. Notice the date. You'll notice this is a full date, right? This is an actual date, a day, a month, a day, and a year. Always put the year first on your reference page. So in the parentheses, it starts with 2001, then a comma, and then you'll follow it up with the month and the date. It's not usually the way we format dates like this, but APA wants the year to appear first. So that's how you do it. Then again, notice the title. So would Tolkien have liked the film? The answer to that question is no, by the way. Notice the capitalization, right? Only the so and the name Tolkien are capitalized. You'll also notice, because it's the title of an article, that there's no other special formatting, right? In the text of your paper, when you reference the title of an article, you'll put it in quotes. When you reference the title of a book, you'll put it in italics. On your reference page, you will still put the titles of your books in italics, but you won't put quotes around your article titles. It'll just be plain, no special formatting. So no quotation marks. And the sentence style capitalization. Notice, however, that the name of the paper, it's a newspaper in this case, is italicized. Then there's a period, and then you have the URL, again, with the HTTPS, the colon, and the double slash, but no retrieved from. Same thing here, author, right, last name, first initial, the date, Title, notice that the names are capitalized, but nothing else is. Subtitle, same thing. The name of the website, Literary Traveler, and the URL. Let's see if I can show you. Here's a book, C.S. Lewis, All My Road Before Me. C.S. Lewis is, pretty famous name. So you include both initials here, but it's Lewis, C.S. The date, 1991, period. Notice the title, All My Road Before Me, only the all is capitalized. The subtitle, The Diary of C.S. Lewis, 1922 to 1927. C.S. and L are all capitalized, and the T, but nothing else. It's italicized because it's the title of a book. It's followed after the period simply by the name of the publisher. That's all. There used to be a time when you had to include the city of publication. You don't have to do that anymore. Just the name of the publisher. And this is the basic format. Now, the one other thing I want to show you is a journal title, an article from a journal, and that's this, small. So again, last name, comma, first name, period. The date, in this case, it's seasonal. It's a quarterly. So it's 2004, comma, winter, period after the parentheses. The title of the article is O.O. Frodo, Readings of Male Intimacy in the Lord of the Rings. Now, this is in quotes because it's in quotes in the title, because it's a quote from the book. So you keep those. You capitalize the name. Notice here, you capitalize the first word, but not of male intimacy in. You capitalize and you italicize the Lord of the Rings because it's the title of the book. But you notice there's no quotes at the end of it. Okay, so it's a little weird, but it's an article title, so it doesn't go in quotes. You're only using the quotes here because that's part of the title. The name of the journal, MFS, Modern Fiction Studies. It's all there, it's all capitalized, and it's all italicized. It's followed by a comma, and then you get this string of numbers. The first number that you'll see is the volume number. It's actually supposed to be italicized. I don't know why it's not italicized here, but make a note of that. It's actually supposed to be italicized, the volume number. You'll notice then right next to it, in parentheses and not italicized, is another number. That's the issue number. When you have a volume and an issue number, that's how you format them. There's no V or VOL or any abbreviations or anything like that. It's just the numbers. So you have the number, the volume number. In this case, it's 50. It's supposed to be italicized. I'm going to have to fix that. I don't know why it's not italicized here. But so you italicize the volume number, right next to it in parentheses, plain text, no italics, the issue number. You'll then follow that with a comma, and then you'll follow that with the page numbers. Just the numbers, again, no abbreviation, no P or PP or anything like that. Just the page numbers with a separated by a hyphen and a period. Now with a journal article, so, a scholarly peer-reviewed article that you're getting through one of the AU databases, say, from the library, you should include what's called a DOI number, a digital object identifier. Every online journal article or every digital journal article is supposed to have one. And they're usually, you usually find it in with all of this other information, the title and the volume and the page numbers and all that. And it should look like this. It should be a URL, https:// followed by doi.org, and then the numbers. If you have that, awesome. Just copy and paste it right onto the end of your reference. If you can't find a DOI, well, don't worry about it. If you can't find a DOI, it doesn't have one, and you don't have to reproduce it. That's it, really. That's the basic format for your what do you call it? Reference page. The only other thing that I haven't mentioned is the hanging indentation, which is this, where you have the whole reference. The first line is not indented, but everything after the first line is. That's called a hanging indent, and you can do that. I can actually show you using the template. If you don't know how to do this, it's pretty simple. You do it, easiest way is to highlight the reference, right click on it so that you get this menu, go down to paragraph, go up to indentation. Under special, when you click this arrow, you'll see none first line hanging, just choose hanging and it'll do it automatically. Okay. But you do have to make sure that your reference page is uses hanging indentation. And that, my friends, is it. That is all the basic, sorry, what do you call it? APA formatting. So let me, I'm looking at a text or a chat from a student. All right, well, let me say this. I'm basically finished. Those are the basics. You have these resources now. These are here on the ASC website for you to use. So you can go in, you can download them, refer to them, use the template. I think they're really good resources to use, particularly if you're just getting used to using APA, because it's all laid out for you and it's all explained while you're doing it. So if you have gotten everything you need and you don't have any questions, thank you for coming. If you want to stick around, if you have questions for me or for Laura, please feel free to stick around and you can pose your questions. Otherwise, again, I will say thank you. And yeah, thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you very much.
You are welcome. I'm gonna stop sharing here. All right, now, Felicia, you asked about documentation.
Yes.
So you said you have a form?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm supposed to sign it?